On the morning of the 13th of July, 1980, 259 children arrived at a field in Nottinghamshire. They were there to march. They were part of a marching band and majorette competition called the Hollinwell Show. They were healthy. They were excited. And within 2 hours, 259 of them had collapsed. Not one or two, not 10 or 20. 259 children falling to the ground, one after another, in a field in the English Midlands. No one has ever officially explained why. The Hollinwell Show was an annual event. Marching bands and majorette troops came from across the Midlands to compete. Families lined the field. It was a normal sunny summer morning in Nottinghamshire. The children began marching at around 9 o'clock. The first child collapsed at approximately 9:30. By 11 o'clock, the ambulances could not keep up. Children were falling in the middle of their routines. They were falling on the way to the field. They were falling in the car parks. Some reported a strange smell before they lost consciousness. Some reported dizziness and nausea. Some simply fell with no warning at all. The symptoms included fainting, nausea, vomiting, limb weakness, and hyperventilation. The event was stopped. Ambulances took children to hospitals across Nottinghamshire. None of them were seriously ill. None of them had any lasting physical injury. And by the next morning, every single one had recovered completely. The investigations began immediately. The Department of Health sent experts. The Health and Safety Executive investigated. Environmental health officers tested the field. The water supply was tested. The air was tested. The soil was tested. Samples were taken from children's blood and urine. Every test came back inconclusive. No toxin was identified. No pathogen was found. No environmental cause was confirmed. The official investigation produced no definitive answer. Quietly over the following months, the investigation was closed. The families received no official explanation. The children received no official explanation. 3 theories emerged in the years that followed. The first was pesticides. A farmer had sprayed a nearby field with an organophosphate pesticide the previous evening. Organophosphates are known to cause exactly the symptoms the children reported. The wind direction that morning had been blowing from that field toward the Hollinwell Show. Tests were conducted on the pesticide containers found at the farm. The results were inconclusive. The government never confirmed pesticide exposure as the cause. The second theory was mass psychogenic illness. This is the clinical term for what is commonly called mass hysteria. It occurs when anxiety or stress spreads through a group and produces real physical symptoms. The symptoms are genuine but have no physical cause. Investigators noted that the majority of those who collapsed were girls. They noted that the collapses spread from child to child in a social pattern. They noted that children in separate locations away from the main group were less affected. But there was a problem with this theory. Some of the children who collapsed were as young as 4 years old. 4-year-olds do not experience the social anxiety that typically drives mass psychogenic illness. And some children collapsed while completely alone, with no other sick children visible. The third theory was something no official investigation wanted to formally consider. Something had been released into the air that morning, something unidentified, something that affected a specific group of people in a specific location. And that was never formally named or acknowledged. The children grew up. The Hollinwell Incident became a case study in British medical literature. It is cited in academic papers on mass psychogenic illness. But the families who were there still do not accept the mass hysteria explanation. The parents who watched their children collapse remember what they saw. They remember the smell. They remember the speed. They remember that the children who fell first were not in sight of those who fell later. A community group was formed. They corresponded with government departments for years. They received polite acknowledgements and no answers. One former child from the event, now in her 50s, described it this way: "We were told it was in our heads. But we were 4 years old. There was nothing in our heads except a marching band and a summer morning." I have thought about this story for a long time, and I have come to 3 possible conclusions. First conclusion: the Hollinwell incident was mass psychogenic illness. The evidence is the social spread of the collapses, the rapid recovery, and the absence of any confirmed physical cause. Mass psychogenic illness is real, documented, and has affected groups of children before. The fact that some very young children were affected does not rule it out entirely. Anxiety and panic can spread through a crowd in ways that affect even the youngest members. Second conclusion: organophosphate pesticide exposure caused the collapses. The timing, the symptoms, and the wind direction all fit. The investigation was inconclusive because the evidence was not properly preserved in time. The government closed the investigation because a confirmed pesticide incident would have meant liability and consequences for the farming industry. The inconclusive result was convenient for everyone except the 259 children and their families. Third conclusion: something happened at Hollinwell that day that fits neither theory perfectly. The pattern of collapses, the reported smell, the age distribution, and the speed together suggest something more specific than panic and more targeted than random pesticide drift. What that something is has never been confirmed, and that may not be accidental. I do not know which conclusion is correct. Perhaps all of them contain part of the truth. But here is what I do know. Somewhere in Nottinghamshire, there are people in their 40s and 50s who remember a summer morning in 1980. They remember the field. They remember the marching. They remember falling. And they remember waking up and being told that nothing was wrong, that it was in their heads. 259 of them. That is the story of the Hollinwell incident, a story about childhood, unexplained illness, and what happens when governments cannot explain what they cannot explain. What do you think caused it? Leave your answer in the comments. Subscribe to VeilStory. Every week, we lift the veil on the stories that were never properly explained. See you in the next video.